Hi, I'm Ken. Welcome to part 26 of my channel. I have a question. Is it possible that I could be born again, live for 50 years as a faithful believer, die, go to heaven, and then find out that I've lived a life of dead works? Or conversely, be born again, live for 50 years as a believer, die, go to heaven, and find out that my works are good and pleasing in God's sight. Now, the two pictures are poles apart. And yet, funny enough, in Christendom, that's exactly what we've got. The key is, what does the Bible teach me and warn me about concerning what is dead works and what is good works that are pleasing in God's sight? In 2 Corinthians chapter 3, the Apostle Paul compares the old covenant with the new covenant. And he literally, and just to paraphrase it, he says that the old covenant, actually the law, written on tablets of stone, actually had a glory that caused Moses' face to shine, that they had to put a veil over his face. However, he says that if you compare the glory of the old covenant to the glory of the new covenant, the glory of the new covenant excels to such an extent that it, when compared with that of the old, it makes the old covenant appear as if it had no glory at all, even though it did have a glory. Can you understand that the new covenant is absolutely glorious? However, in verse 6, he says this: who also hath made us able ministers of the New Testament, or the New Covenant. Here comes the warning. Not of the letter, or what? According to the old covenant. Remember, the old covenant was based on the letter of the law. So in other words, you comply, this is what the law says, and you comply. Not of the letter, but of the Spirit. For here it comes, for the letter killeth, but the Spirit giveth life. In other words, if I approach the new covenant with the spirit or the mentality of the old covenant, all it produces is death. That's it. That's all it does. You'll see in Romans chapter 7, the law produced death. Why? The law's purpose was not to produce life. It was to show Israel their sinful condition so that they could see their need for a savior. So the law had a purpose. It was a Galatians chapter 4 and Galatians chapter 3. It was a tutor, a schoolmaster, to bring Israel to the faith. That was it. But the law's purpose was not to produce life. All it did was kill. But if I approach the new covenant, my Christian faith, in the principle and the spirit of the old covenant, I'm producing dead works. Death, in other words. All right. Verse 9. Look how he compares the two covenants. For if the ministration of condemnation be glory, much more doth the ministration of, here it comes, righteousness exceed in glory. Remember, the language of the old covenant was do. The language of the new covenant is done. In other words, to believe and trust in that finished work of Christ's sacrifice is righteousness and life. That's why Romans 8:10 says the Spirit is life because of righteousness. Okay, do you understand that? There's two mentalities, one of do, the other one of done. Two spirits, one of works and other one of faith. That's it. It's one or the other. You can't combine the two the way the Galatian church tried to do. Paul rebuked the Galatian church. I would encourage you, go and read the book of Galatians. There's 6 chapters. In fact, read it 5 times, all 6 chapters, without reading anywhere else in the scriptures. By the time you've done it 3 times, the penny will drop. You'll understand exactly what I'm trying to tell you. All right. Now, there is another, I beg your pardon, sorry. There is another warning here in Hebrews chapter 5. I'm going to show you how the ministration of death or condemnation kills, how spiritually you're alive, but it produces dead works. Sadly, it's in Hebrews chapter 9 verse 14, where he speaks about how much more will the blood of Christ purge our conscience from dead works to serve the living God. That's you'll see that in Hebrews 9 verse 14. Yeah, he's speaking to the same group of believers. However, he has a word of chastisement. Listen to this. Speaking of Jesus, called of God and high priest after the order of Melchizedek, of whom we have many things to say and hard to be uttered, or what? Difficult to explain. Why? Because you're approaching everything with the spirit of condemnation or with a spirit of works. All right. I beg your pardon. Hard to be uttered, seeing, and then it says, hard to be uttered, seeing you are dull of hearing, he says. Remember Jesus, he that hath an ear, let him hear. Or what? Listen with the purpose to understand. That's exactly what these people were struggling with their ability to understand. Now, he's not saying that they were stupid. It's just spiritual language needs a spiritual ear. In other words, the heart and mind to listen with the purpose to understand. It's spirit revelation. It's not working it out according to the letter of the law. Verse 12, for when for the time you ought to be teachers, you have need that one teach you again, which be the first principles of the oracles of God. How scary is that? These believers had been saved for such a long time, and yet they were spiritual babes, still needing to be taught. Still needing to be taught. In other words, the fact that they've been saved for many years didn't necessarily mean that they were mature believers. In other words, their life was a life of dead works, not pleasing in the sight of God, but also affecting their ability to stand strong in the faith. These Christian believers were contemplating going back to Judaism under the sacrificial system of the law. And why? Because of persecution. Whereas if they were mature in the faith, they would have handled their persecution easily, just like the Apostle Paul and all the other apostles did. No problem. In fact, Fox's Book of Martyrs, I've got it on my bookshelf at the back there, has examples of mature believers steadfastly enduring hardship and persecution, many of them being put to death for their faith during the time of the Inquisition. So, yeah, over here he's rebuking them, saying, come on guys, you should have been teachers by now. For everyone that uses milk, verse 13, is unskillful in the words of righteousness, for he is a babe. Can you see the ministry of life brings? Or is a ministry of righteousness, or unskillful in the words of righteousness. There's the key. So which is it? The letter, which produces condemnation, or the new covenant, the spirit, which produces righteousness? There's the key. But it's all got to do with the ability to hear with the purpose to understand. Now, next week, I'm going to share with you a key that unlocks your ability to tap into the spirit life. It's simple, and yet it's very, very easy. I'll see you next week with more bite-sized chunks. God bless.